Jake had fallen head over heels for my buddy. He brought her along, straight up challenging his folks, and declared he was ditching our engagement. He pointed at me and told both families, I never vibed with her. Marrying her would just gross me out. That was the final straw for me liking Jake. Soon after, other dudes started spilling their feelings for me. But Jake was hell-bent on keeping me to himself. Clutching the marriage certificate he'd penned for us back in our childhood, he tried everything to keep me from anyone else. You swore, when we grew up, you'd only marry me. When Jake began beefing with my friend and his parents, I had just pulled up. I kicked the snow off my boots and was about to swing the door open. I've told you before, I never agreed to that lame engagement. The guy's icy laugh made me hesitate. That engagement was set up by our parents when you both were just kids. Are you dragging this girl here to shame your uncle and Aunt May? I peeked through the door crack and saw Jake in a heated argument with his dad. My parents sat quietly beside them, their faces grim. This is my girlfriend, Jake announced, holding Emily's hand to stake his claim. His dad turned beet red with rage. You can only marry Lisa? You don't have any other option, I shook, and unexpectedly shoved the door open. All eyes were on me. Jake's stare was frosty as he pointed at me, looking at his parents. His words were cutting. I never liked her. Marrying her would just disgust me. Without waiting for a reply, he bailed, still holding Emily's hand. His eyes casually glanced my way. Behind him, I could hear Jake's parents quickly apologizing, while my dad looked furious, like he wanted to chase Jake down and give him a piece of his mind. I just watched as they walked away. Jake and I had grown up together. All these years, he'd never denied our childhood betrothal. Even when folks teased us, he'd laugh along. I thought he had feelings for me, just like I did for him. That night, after my parents took turns comforting me for hours, I was finally allowed to crash. My mom had called me in, so I didn't go back to the dorm. As I was about to drift off, the phone on the nightstand buzzed. It was a text from Jake. I'm downstairs. Come down. We need to talk. I remembered his harsh words from earlier. My childhood friend to be with another girl had stabbed me with those cruel lines. That night, I didn't go downstairs, but sleep eluded me. I had a fragmented dream. Young Jake sat at a desk, meticulously writing something. Soon he finished and leapt off the chair. He ran up to my younger self. Lisa, don't cry. When we grow up, you'll marry me. His tiny, soft hands pressed the marriage certificate he had written into my hands, his eyes bright and sincere. I'll protect you, Lisa. The moon broke through the last cloud, its light flickering in my eyes. Half awake, I wiped the tears from my eyes. The next morning, on my way to school, Jake blocked my path again. You're leaving late? Skip breakfast again? His familiar tone made me pause. He handed me a bag with breakfast inside. What I said yesterday wasn't meant to hurt you. I was just pissed, that's why I said those things. I stepped back, avoiding the breakfast. I don't need it. Eating your breakfast would just gross me out. Jake pulled his hand back, staring at me. His voice softened. Does yelling at me make you feel better? Lisa, I hope you won't cause trouble for Emily. She hasn't done anything wrong. I was the one who liked her first. I have to admit, Jake's words were pretty spot on. But it was Emily who had stirred things up. We got to school one after the other. As soon as I sat at my desk, Emily walked over holding a cup of milk. Everyone's eyes turned to us. Lisa, want some milk? Can you forgive me? I glanced at the milk, then at her. What did you do wrong that I need to forgive? Emily placed the milk on my desk, her eyes slightly teary. I shouldn't have sent the follow request on Jake's Insta. Didn't know he was your boyfriend back then. Her voice wavered as she tugged at my sleeve. Lisa, please don't be mad. I promise I can give him back to you. I was about to respond, but another voice cut in. It was Emily's close friend. She snapped angrily and backed Emily up. Emily, why are you apologizing? You and Jake are just friends, right? Didn't steal her boyfriend, so why say sorry? Also, Lisa, can you stop acting like you don't care? Lisa, can you stop being so high and mighty? Stop pretending like you don't care. Their squabbling escalated the drama. You two are just playing roles, one being the good girl and the other the bad, right? I pulled my hand away from Emily's. I didn't use much force, but she stumbled with a scream, falling sideways. She slammed into my desk, spilling the hot milk all over herself. Jake walked in just then. "Emily, you okay?" He quickly took off his jacket and draped it over her, his face full of concern. "It's fine." The onlookers gave me judgmental looks. "Why are you staring at me? She ran into me." I found it kind of funny. Jake hadn't missed what happened, but he was all about Emily now. "I'll take you to the infirmary. Hold on." He picked Emily up, not even looking at me as they left. From start to finish, I was invisible to him. In the afternoon, Emily's friend couldn't take it anymore and got her revenge. She deliberately bumped into me, spilling her water on me, then shoved me down. "Sorry, didn't mean to." She shrugged and walked away like it was nothing. I looked up and met Jake's cold gaze from not far away. He just looked down at me, indifferent, like I was a stranger. Just before the class bell rang, I walked into the classroom, my wet clothes still dripping. I was holding a bottle with warm, pale yellow liquid inside. Before anyone could react, I opened the bottle. The liquid poured over her head, soaking her completely. "I did it on purpose, and I'm not apologizing." She shrieked and jumped up. "What is this? What did you pour on me?" I curled my lips into a smirk, not explaining. Only when things blew up did I clarify to the teacher. It was just a bottle of hot water with 2 tea bags. After this, I was ostracized by the whole class. Everyone kept their distance from me. I even started doubting myself. Did I do something wrong? If I did, why am I the one being excluded? Meanwhile, Jake and Emily became the class couple, the perfect pair of top students. The day they went public with their relationship was also the day I confronted Jake. "Are you coming to the class party on Friday night?" The class monitor hesitated for a long time. After checking with everyone, she still came to test the waters with me. I kept my face calm, but my hand hidden under the table clenched involuntarily. Join in, I thought. Maybe I wasn't as disliked as I thought. At the club, everyone sat together, playing truth or dare. The bottle landed on Jake. Someone asked with a mischievous grin, "If your Lisa and your rumored girlfriend Emily fell into the water at the same time, who would you save?" At the time, I didn't think it would become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Jake and the others sat right across from me. The air instantly chilled. I lowered my gaze and stared at my juice, not blinking once. I knew I could make an excuse to dip out of the room, but for some reason, I didn't move. The guy across from me suddenly chuckled, lightly. His tone was just right. "What do you mean by rumored girlfriend? She's my girlfriend. Didn't I tell you guys?" Out of the corner of my eye, he casually draped his arm over Emily's shoulder and asked, "Emily, can you swim?" "No." The girl was a bit embarrassed. Jake sighed softly, his words full of affection. "Well, if you fall into the sea, I'll have to carry you and swim all the way, right?" He didn't directly answer the question, but the implication was clear. It was obvious. Emily was his girlfriend. Saving his girlfriend first was just natural. I gently closed my eyes, trying to hide the bitterness in my gaze. The others started teasing. I barely breathed, making myself even less noticeable, scared of being met with pity or mockery. But Emily didn't seem ready to let me off the hook so easily. When it was my turn, she smiled sweetly, looking harmless. In a soft voice, she asked, "Lisa, is there anyone here you like? Even if you liked them in the past, it counts." She said the meanest things in the most playful tone, making everyone think she was just joking. "If you're lying, your whole family will die a terrible death." I felt cornered, like there was no escape. If I stood up and caused a scene, I'd probably be permanently isolated. The others would start looking at me weirdly again. I raised my eyes slightly and met Emily's gaze. Yes. As soon as the words left my mouth, I felt Jake's sharp look on me. Emily smiled and linked her arm with Jake's. I see. If this had happened before, I would have felt embarrassed, trapped with no way out. But somehow, after admitting I'd liked Jake, that feeling seemed to drift away. It was like the faintest breeze swept away the last remnants of my unspoken feelings for Jake. The wind passed, and the water's surface remained calm. At 17, I let go of my 3-year-long crush. I finally realized I didn't like Jake anymore. Asterisk, asterisk, Lucy, asterisk, asterisk. The party was winding down, and just before I was about to bounce, Jake called out to me. He walked up, his expression mixed. "Today you said you liked someone." He paused for a couple of seconds before continuing, "Was it me?" Honestly, I couldn't feel anything for the guy in front of me anymore. "Yes," I added, but that was in the past. The moment he pointed at me and said marrying me would be disgusting, I decided I didn't like him anymore. "Besides, you have a girlfriend now. I've really moved on." Jake pressed his lips tightly together, silent. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I always saw you as a little sister." I didn't want to hear his weak words anymore. "Lucy, I'll make it up to you." I immediately shut him down and showed through my actions that I wanted to distance myself from him and his girlfriend. But Jake wouldn't listen. He kept doing pointless things to fill the void of his guilt. He insisted on bringing me breakfast, even though I pushed him away every time. His occasional thoughtful gestures were getting on my nerves. Emily couldn't see me avoiding him and thought I was trying to steal Jake away. She started making things difficult for me one after another. The day before the exam results were released, Emily was called to the office alone. When she came back, she was crying at the desk. Rumors started spreading that she had cheated on the exam. Neither Jake nor her friends believed Emily had cheated. After all, she was the second top student, just behind Jake. Impossible. That cheat sheet they found couldn't possibly be hers. Yeah, Emily isn't that kind of person. I didn't pay much attention, but I remember that I did well on the exam. After checking the answers, I found I had made far fewer mistakes than before. When the results came out, before I had time to celebrate, Jake blocked my path after school. "Lucy, did you do it? Frame Emily for cheating. Wasn't that cheat sheet yours?" He questioned me coldly, stepping closer. "Am I that free?" I scoffed. "Do you really think I care about her enough to cause trouble?" Jake stared at me with sharp eyes. "Then why did your score go up this time? Can't it just be that I studied harder?" I couldn't take it anymore. "Jake, stop being so paranoid." His face darkened. Suddenly, he sneered. "Lucy, how did you turn into this? Frame someone? And you still haven't repented." Jake shook his head, eyes full of disappointment. "Is this how your family raised you?" I laughed angrily, about to retort, but Jake showed his phone screen, displaying a surveillance video. After the exam ended, before the lunch break, I was the only one who entered the office. This was Emily's plan. The cheat sheet had been deliberately placed in her test paper. She knew those questions, so no one believed she had cheated. And with this video, I was directly convicted. Jake looked down at me, his gaze cold. Everyone has to take responsibility for their actions. I pinned my last hope on the teacher. After all, this was a matter that couldn't be settled with solid evidence. It relied on everyone's subjective judgment, but the teacher just looked at me with reproach. "What was your purpose in doing this? Are you jealous that Emily did better than you?" My throat went dry instantly, and all my strength drained away. I couldn't say a word. When Jake accompanied Emily into the office, she was still tearfully pleading. "Aren't we supposed to be close friends? I always thought of you as a good friend. Is this how you treat me?" She grabbed a thick book from the desk and slammed it into my face, while crying, "You almost ruined my life with this. Do you know that?" Jake just turned his head away, silent. The teacher casually scolded Emily for hitting me. She gave me a warning look before I could strike back, then changed the subject. "Lucy, apologize, and I won't cancel your exam results. If your results are canceled, you'll be placed in the advanced class for the final year." But how could I admit to something I didn't do? I'll say it outright, I didn't frame Emily for cheating. As soon as the words left my mouth, I felt a sharp pain in my nose. Emily had slapped me hard enough to draw blood. I didn't care about the shocked looks from the three of them, and walked away. "Stop." Jake chased after me, blocking my way. He saw my bleeding nose and frowned, but what he said was still reproachful. "You have to apologize to Emily. She shouldn't have to bear this shame because of you." I lightly wiped my nose and showed him my hand, speaking softly. "Can I go clean up first?" I felt utterly exhausted. It was like hanging on the edge of a cliff, unable to hold on any longer. I didn't even want to argue with him. Jake furrowed his brow. "I'll take you." Saying that, he reached out to pull me, but I took a small step back, lowering my eyes, void of any emotion. "Jake," I said softly, "please get away from me." In the end, I still didn't apologize to Emily, but it seemed like everyone just assumed I was framing her. Even the classmates who had ignored me before began to gossip behind my back. The exam paper I thought I did better on was also disqualified. My emotions, which seemed stable, were actually on the verge of collapse. That day, we were supposed to attend a summer camp organized by the school. No one was allowed to skip without a valid reason. So, once again, Emily found another chance to frame me. Emily and Lucy, you're in the same group. Go pick up some branches. Once we entered the dense forest, Emily's true nature was exposed. I quietly took out my voice recorder from my bag. Lucy must be so upset that I stole your man, huh? She stood behind me, speaking leisurely. I guided the conversation. So you deliberately planted that cheat sheet on me to make Jake hate me, so I couldn't take him back? She glanced around before smiling and answering, yeah, no one believes you're innocent. How does it feel? Was it painful when that book hit your face? I got the information I wanted and decided not to drag it out. With this recording, she would be finished, disgraced, punished, and probably transferred. But she wasn't satisfied. Just as I turned away, she suddenly shoved me hard. I tumbled down the slope, and Emily, in her smug moment, twisted her ankle and rolled down with me. We both got stuck on a tree trunk on the slope, hanging dangerously. I tried to pull myself up, but it was useless. Jake must have heard Emily scream, because he was the first to rush over. Jake, I'm so scared. She looked at him pitifully. His gaze towards me was full of sympathy. I'm sorry, Lucy. He reached his hand out to Emily. As soon as Emily gets up, I'll help you. Emily froze when she heard this. She began climbing up with Jake's help. I pressed my lips together. Okay, thank you. I had no reason to complain. Emily was his girlfriend, so it was only natural he'd help her first. The fact that he was willing to help me, even a little, was already beyond my expectation. I had thought he wouldn't risk it and would just go back to get a teacher for me. But as Emily climbed, she suddenly stepped on my hand. She kept grinding it, her other foot hanging in the air, as if she accidentally stepped on me. I winced in pain and instinctively let go. I rolled further down the hill. Lucy, Lucy. I could hear Jake and Emily calling my name. She still didn't forget to act, playing her part fully. Luckily, the leaves below were thick enough, and the slope wasn't too steep. I eventually stopped when my back hit a tree trunk. I had multiple scratches and bruises on my body. The only serious injury was the impact on my back. I slowly propped myself up against the tree, and that's when I realized the biggest problem. I was lost. There was no signal on my phone. Meanwhile, Emily was doing everything she could to stop anyone from rescuing me. In the end, I relied on the compass on my phone and stumbled my way out of the forest. But when I got back to the meeting point, I found everyone had already left. I stopped dialing the teacher and coldly laughed before calling my parents. The injury wasn't serious, but I had to stay in the hospital for observation for a day. Jake came to my hospital room after my parents returned home that evening. Lucy. His voice was hoarse. At that moment, I was staring out at the dark sky. Jake. I slowly spoke, only noticing him out of the corner of my eye as he approached. Today, while I was trying to find my way out of the woods, I suddenly remembered our school trip to the forest park. I paused and looked at him. Do you remember? He looked confused, clearly not recalling. I continued, emotionless. That time I was bitten by a snake, even though you knew it wasn't poisonous. You still carried me to the hospital right away. It was so hot that day, and you ran the whole way drenched in sweat, but you never put me down, because you knew I was afraid of pain. I was lying on your back, and I thought, I sighed softly, I really liked you, Jake. How could people change so quickly? Why did the boy who used to take care of me in every little detail always put me first now say I was disgusting? Why did he allow others to hurt me? Even when my life was in danger, he chose to do nothing. Jake's eyes were full of regret. He couldn't argue. All he could do was apologize. I'm sorry, Lucy. I was wrong, really wrong. Please forgive me. I won't leave you alone again. I took a deep breath. Looking at him, I raised my hand and slapped him. How dare you ask for my forgiveness? Go save Emily first. She's your girlfriend. I can't blame you, but you knew it was dangerous when I fell, even though we've only known each other for 10 years. We're just classmates. Couldn't you at least tell the teacher or call the police? You're as cold-blooded as an animal. What if I hadn't made it out of the forest? I might have never had the chance to hear your useless words. Jake looked defeated, unable to stand. He knelt by my bed and reached out to hold my hand. His voice trembled, his dark eyes full of pain. I'm sorry, Lucy. I forgot. I really forgot. Emily's situation was just too urgent. I tugged at the dry corner of my mouth, avoiding him. What kind of urgency could she have had considering she didn't even fall? Get out. Jake didn't move but looked at me pleadingly. When my gaze shifted to the glass on the bedside table, Emily pushed the door to the room open. But she looked worse than me, sitting in a wheelchair with a sickly expression. Lucy, don't blame why. Her eyes were slightly red, on the verge of tears. Because I twisted my ankle. I was so afraid of the pain. I begged you to take me to the hospital first. Yes, that's how urgent her situation was. I'm sorry. I thought my boyfriend would always put me first. I forgot that he was different. He still has you, his childhood friend. I was selfish. She sobbed as she tried to stand up. Just before she fell, Jake rushed to catch her. Then he carried her back to the wheelchair. The moment he turned to look at me, I suddenly lost control of my emotions. I crashed everything near me towards the two of them. Jake shielded Emily, and a piece of glass hit him on the forehead, drawing blood. Get out. I can't stand looking at you two for another second. I glared at them, every word heavy. Both of you disgust me. Emily was considerate as always, pulling at Jake's sleeve, ready to leave. Jake stared at me silently for a long while. Before they left, as they opened the door, I suddenly spoke. Emily! The figure in the wheelchair froze. Before I fell down the hill, you gave me a gift. I stared deeply at her back, my hand unconsciously clutching the blanket, trembling. I will make good use of it. She paused for just a second before leaving, unaffected. To Emily, everything she did seemed flawless. Add to that her repeated victories, leaving her unscathed each time, and it was inevitable she'd get a little carried away. So she didn't take my words seriously. In fact, right after leaving, she sent me a video she'd recorded earlier taunting me. It was probably a video she secretly filmed with a camera she set up in advance. Emily had only sprained her ankle, but Jake, worried there might be other injuries, insisted on her staying in the hospital for observation for a day. In the video, Emily was holding Jake's waist, her voice soft. Do you blame me for not getting you to save Lucy in time? Jake gently patted her head, letting out a small sigh. No. Emily held him even tighter. Because you're my boyfriend, I was scared and could only turn to you. I thought I was the most important person to you. The video was blurry, but Jake's voice rang out clearly in the hospital room. Emily, you're always the most important person to me. Just after he said that, he cupped her chin and leaned in to kiss her. Right after this video, there was a message. Now you know why I didn't go down to the hill to find you. I stared blankly at my phone for a moment before shutting it off. I found myself wondering, what was I doing when they kissed? Oh, I was anxiously trying not to get bitten by a snake, enduring the pain in my body, slowly making my way out of the forest on my own. The wind that evening was colder than usual, even though I already had a recording proving that Emily was the mastermind behind the cheating in the exam. It was tricky because I had also been pushed down the hill by Emily. But there was no evidence for that. A recording would hardly be enough to bring her down in my eyes. Just as I was considering whether I should only submit the recording, Erica, a classmate, came to me after we got back to school during free time. She came over to me when no one was watching. I saw everything. I glanced up at her. She continued. I was trying to explore a secluded area that day and saw Emily push you. She also lied to the teacher, which is why no one came to help you. Seeing I wasn't responding, her face flushed a little as she slowly explained. I was too scared to speak out at the time. What if you had died there with no one to prove what happened? I was afraid Emily might target me. It was a natural reaction. After all, if someone would push me down, they'd likely have no qualms about valuing a life so little. I remained calm, trying to get more from her. You saw it, but it doesn't matter. The evidence won't be enough to convict her. Erica looked around, hesitating to speak. I waited in silence. Lucy, your family is wealthy. If I give you this evidence, can you really get her put in jail? She bit her lip, clearly scared. Because if you can't get her jailed, I'm afraid she'll come after me. I nodded, then smiled suddenly. You know, Emily is already an adult. This means the law couldn't be lenient with her anymore. Erica finally looked relieved. She took out her phone and showed me the video. From her angle, it clearly captured Emily intentionally pushing me. As for the lie she told the teacher, there were more witnesses. According to Erica, after Emily and the others returned, she sent Jake away to help her find a car to take her to the hospital. Then, when everyone was about to leave and look for me, Emily stopped them. Teacher, Lucy told me she wasn't feeling well and left early. I saw her family's car pick her up. The teacher was skeptical. I'll need to call her parents to confirm. Emily visibly panicked. Why is there no signal? The teacher frowned at her phone. Emily didn't give her a second chance to call. Don't you trust me? Isn't it normal for Lucy to leave early? After all, her family is so rich. It's normal she couldn't handle this place, right? I had already sensed the teacher's inexplicable bias against me during Emily's slander, and how much she liked Emily. At first, I thought it was just because Emily was a good student, but now I realized it wasn't all about that. She probably had a deep-seated resentment toward wealth. Emily had used this to her advantage, subtly bringing up my family background, fueling the teacher's dislike of me. At the right moment, Emily shifted the topic, pretending to be in pain. My ankle's really swollen. Can you call my parents for me? Her actions flowed smoothly, and I lost any chance of being helped. Emily was completely finished, but suddenly I didn't want to see her destroyed right away. During Tuesday's break, I snuck into the broadcasting room when no one was paying attention. I hit record on the microphone. How did it feel? Was it painful when that book hit your face? Emily's voice echoed clearly into everyone's ears. Unfortunately, I couldn't see her expression at that moment. Although I was scolded by the head of discipline for this, Emily's reputation was shattered. Wait, Emily really wrote those notes herself? My God, she's always been a goddess to me. How could she be this disgusting? The students' voices were full of unrestrained gossip. I watched as Emily's face turned pale. At the same time, Jake didn't look too good either. He stopped me while I was getting some hot water, his eyes full of panic and apology. Lucy? I misunderstood. I twisted the lid of the cup and spoke calmly, say what you need to say all at once. After a long pause, he finally spoke. Can you forgive me, Lucy? Without hesitation, I splashed the water into his face. It wasn't very hot, but it was enough to make him look pathetic. If you were me, do you think you could forgive me? Jake stood still, letting me pour the water. The droplets fell from his hair, and he looked down, a sad smile on his face. Do you really hate me that much, that you don't even want our 10 years of friendship? The early spring wind was still cold, almost biting, especially with Jake's school uniform soaked. His shoulders shivered from the cold, yet he still stubbornly waited for my answer. Jake, you don't have the right to bring up those 10 years. The moment my words fell, the hope in his eyes faded instantly. As he turned to leave, a quiet question came from behind. Really, can't you forgive me? How could I forgive him? How could I forgive someone whose actions made me completely let go of over 10 years of childhood affection in just 2 months? Just when Emily thought this was the end, I sent her another message, leading her to the equipment room. It was a screenshot from the video Erica had sent me. What else do you want? Emily gritted her teeth, her face pale. It seemed she hadn't been doing well these past few days. I held up a nearly 6-centimeter thick dictionary, weighing it in my hand. Slap yourself and stop when I say so, or should I do it? Your choice. Emily was afraid I'd hold a grudge and take revenge. So she held back her anger and began slapping herself. The red marks on her face deepened, swelling unevenly. Suddenly, footsteps came from outside the equipment room. I panicked. 2 girls alone. One with a swollen, red face. With Emily's personality, I would probably be labeled as a school bully. As I froze for a moment, the footsteps grew louder. I looked at the door that had a small gap. Just as I stood there, startled, the door was closed, which meant someone outside had shut it for me. A kind act after Emily made her own nosebleed, I stopped her actions. Please, she muttered, barely moving her lips, afraid to make the wound worse. Don't give the video to the police. I let out a light laugh, mocking her absurdity. I pushed the door open and walked straight out. All done? A small voice suddenly came from the door, making me jump. The Good Samaritan who helped close the door was Erica, who had happened to pass by. I'll keep an eye on things. No one saw you hit her. I didn't hit her. From the start, I had planned not to lay a hand on her. Emily slapped herself, so they couldn't pin anything on me. Thanks. I nodded at her and was about to leave. Lucy? Her face was filled with hesitation. A few seconds later, she shoved a drink into my hands, without a word. I'm sorry I didn't know the truth before and just went along with everyone isolating you. She spoke so quickly, one long breath in between. If you need any help with your studies or anything else, you can come to me. Goodbye. After that, she turned and quickly left without looking back. I stared at the warm drink in my hands. This was the first act of kindness I had received since I was isolated. That afternoon after school, I took the video to the police station. I stood at the school gate, watching Emily being taken away by the police. She was crying and shouting, "Please don't take me away. I'm about to apply for college. Please don't." The police car slowly shrank from my view until it disappeared. For some reason, I thought back to the time when Emily was even ranked higher than Jake, the top student of the year. I remembered her back then, full of bright-eyed optimism. At the same time, the teacher involved couldn't escape the consequences. Her negligence, her strong biases against students, and her inability to differentiate right from wrong would ultimately cost her. Before being dismissed, she came to find me. She hoped I would write a letter of forgiveness. Why should I? I couldn't hide my disgust. Letting someone like her continue teaching is irresponsible to the students at any school. People like her should be crushed under the feet of those she despises the most, groveling and crawling, because that's what she deserves. The class got a new teacher. Soon people realized it had all been a misunderstanding of me. They started talking to me, asking if I wanted to go out for lunch. But I started feeling out of place. It wasn't pretension. I had gotten used to being alone. I told myself, being by myself had its benefits. But as I grew more accustomed to being alone, I started feeling the need for another kind of noise. It was inevitable that I'd develop some exclusivity. So when the class leader asked again if I wanted to join the class party, I thought for a moment and shook my head, declining. But not every group activity could be avoided. For example, the cultural committee member took it upon herself to sign the whole class up for a choir. At that time, I didn't expect that the girl who had been ostracized 2 months ago would now become the center of attention. On the day of the arts festival, after I changed into my outfit, I hesitated for a long time before coming out of the bathroom. The clothes seemed to be the wrong size. The top was a bit too short. Lucy, Jake had been cooperating with the police investigation in recent times, so he barely came to school. I stopped in my tracks, frowning. What do you want now? Jake hadn't done anything wrong per se, but because he had been involved in everything, he got a written warning. He didn't mind my coldness, his eyes growing darker. I broke up with Emily. Before, I didn't know about all the wrong things she had done. I was about to speak, but he cut me off. I know you hate me. I know you do. He gave a self-deprecating smile and tugged at the corner of his mouth. I came here today just to explain. I really didn't know about what she had done. Whether you believe me or not, Lucy, I've never had ill intentions toward you. If it wasn't for Emily's manipulation, he leaned weakly against the wall, shaking his head with a bitter smile. We never would have ended up like this. Jake, you really are pathetic. I rubbed my forehead tiredly. Are you really at peace with putting all the blame on Emily? Did someone force you to be with her? Jake raised his gaze to meet mine, a helpless look flooding his expression. So what should I do, Lucy? I don't know what to do to make you not hate me so much. His eyes suddenly darkened, and his expression became unreadable. I don't know what's wrong with me, Jake. I couldn't take it anymore, and I didn't want to hear what he was about to say. I bypassed him and walked toward the backstage dressing room. Before stepping on stage, I unknowingly raised my hand, and a glimpse of my waist was caught in a photo. The picture was then posted to the confession wall. This girl is my type. Please share her contact. Wow, she looks amazing. Such a good waist. I want her contact too. I've seen her. She's probably the one performing on stage for this class. The post went viral quickly. It wasn't until I returned backstage and was blocked by a group of people that I understood what was happening. Can I have your phone number? A shy boy, his ears slightly red, was half pushed toward me by his friends. I was confused and was about to refuse when Jake cut through the crowd and walked toward me. Lucy, congratulations on your performance. He smiled and handed me a bouquet of flowers. Who's he? I overheard someone whispering nearby. I don't know, but it looks like he's Lucy's boyfriend. The voice wasn't quiet, at least Jake and I could hear it clearly. Someone came up to ask, is he your boyfriend? They pointed at me and asked Jake. He didn't deny it, just raised an eyebrow. So don't ask for her phone number. I found it amusing. I walked up and shoved the flowers back into Jake's arms. I'm not with him. I said this and left without looking at Jake's darkening face, but it seemed like he couldn't let go. That evening after school, he followed me the whole way. Lucy, we already had an engagement. Today I didn't deny it, just to stop them from spreading your phone number. I looked at him for 2 seconds, suddenly realizing he had never understood that he was wrong. Do you remember when you wrote me a marriage certificate when we were little? I turned my head, my gaze drifting to one side. My voice was calm, but with the sudden drop in temperature, it sounded colder than usual. Back then, I was too young, and although I didn't understand the meaning of marriage, I knew that meant we could always be together. That made me feel safe. I looked at the boy in front of me, his eyes red. Because you said you would always protect me. But you broke the engagement you proposed and didn't do anything you promised. Jake collapsed to his knees at my feet. He tightly held my hand. Don't say any more, Lucy. I've made so many mistakes. I slowly pulled my hand away, looking down at him. Yes, you made mistakes. The harm you caused me can't be erased. Jake, I'll never forgive you. So please stop following me. He didn't agree that day. When he left, he said he might have fallen for the wrong person. That night, I suddenly remembered that I hadn't thrown away that marriage certificate. After rummaging through my things, I found it, didn't look at it again, and ripped it into pieces, throwing it into the trash downstairs. For the next while, Jake didn't bother me. But since we were in the same class, I could always catch him staring at me blankly whenever I turned around. I suppressed the frustration and tried not to pay attention to him. But one day, Jake finally tore off his disguise. That was the last time I saw him, right before graduation. Even though I didn't give that guy my phone number that day, he would still occasionally barge into our classroom between lessons, bringing me little snacks. I had no choice but to return them, which would waste the entire break. Later, I started avoiding him so much that I probably really pissed him off. One day after school, he publicly confessed his feelings for me right at the school gate. His look of determination, combined with the cheesy, awkward confession, felt like pressure. Sorry, I said in a businesslike tone. I don't like you. She doesn't like you. Are you done yet? Jake, of course, noticed the scene. Today there was a thin layer of anger on his face. The guy turned around confused and glared at him. What's your relationship with her? Jake smeared and walked over, delivering a punch that sent her stumbling a few steps back. She's obviously with me. With that, they started fighting. The recent academic pressure, plus Jake's occasional meddling, was suffocating me. It felt like I couldn't breathe. Before things escalated further, they stopped fighting. It was a relief we didn't end up at the police station, but my frustration had reached its peak. On an empty street, Jake stood in front of me with his head down, looking like he'd done something wrong. I didn't mean to bother you, Lucy. I know you don't like him. I just wanted to help you get rid of him. Jake! My voice rose without me realizing it. Please, stop doing these pointless things. All you're doing now is making me feel uncomfortable. Do you understand? When I was bullied, you didn't show up, and now there's no need for you to. He stayed silent for a while, then spoke again, his voice weak. I'm sorry. He pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from his bag. After you threw it away, I picked it up and carefully put it back together. The wedding certificate was wrapped with layers of tape. His voice cracked, and his hands trembled. You promised me, when we grew up, you'd only marry me. I barely remembered that day. I only recall being so angry at Jake for not listening to me. I probably scolded him for a long time and slapped him several times. In the end, I sat on the side of the road, crying, begging him not to bother me anymore. The wedding certificate he'd worked so hard to piece together was torn apart again by me. And after that, Jake truly never appeared in front of me again. The next day, his parents called in to excuse him from school. They said he would study at home for the last month before graduation. Though I was a bit surprised, I felt more of a sense of relief. It wasn't until graduation that I heard from my parents about what happened to Jake. On the way home that evening, he was distracted and caused a car accident. He had been cooperating with the treatment, so there was a chance he could recover in time for the college entrance exam. But he became so negative that he even refused to take his medication. His mom even called my mom before the exam, hoping I could go talk to him. After hearing that, my dad grabbed the phone from her hand. If he wants to ruin himself, don't drag my daughter into this. Clearly, he was still angry about the public breakup. I got into a prestigious university with excellent grades. The day I received my admission letter, I got a message from an unfamiliar number. Congratulations on your bright future. It was the most formal message, and I immediately knew it was from Jake. I didn't feel much of anything, simply blocked the number without a second thought. Breathing in the hot air, my heart was strangely calm. In my mind, everything from the past 6 months replayed like scenes in a movie, each frame more intense than the last. In the end, everything culminated at my graduation ceremony. Some got what they deserved. Some regretted their past choices. As for me, I got what I deserved. I held my admission letter in my hand, gazing at the direction of my future university. I knew my life was just beginning,